This is all about food. This is all about using fantastic Vietnamese ingredients. As a chef, I learned a long time ago that the secret of good cooking is first and foremost the ingredients. People in Vietnam are very fortunate because they have such wonderful ingredients.
With that thought, John Burton Race decided to hit the local market to buy the very freshest and healthiest ingredients. Before witnessing for himself the diversity of cooking ingredients in Vietnam, all the ingredients in his kitchen were brought from the UK, but he no longer needs to do so.
I try to put my style of food using Vietnamese ingredients with an Asian flair to create something quite new and unique.
Chef John Burton Race first came to Vietnam in January 5, 2019, collaborating with Paradise Group to design first-hand crafted 40-dish menu with Michelin standards in Ha Long Bay. On April 2019, he returned to Vietnam to take part in a culinary journey in some restaurants in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. During his journey, Chef John collaborated with Vietnamese chefs to introduce Asian European flavored dishes.
Thank you very much, Chef John, for joining the show. Do you remember your first experience with Vietnamese ingredients?
My first experience was back in January when I met all the guys down in Ha Long, and we spent a couple of days going around the marketplace so that I could identify with the food and the local ingredients. I think my first meal was very, very basic. It was I think you call it a pho, where you have a big stock and some lovely rice noodles, and you can have a very thinly sliced pork in it, or maybe duck, and it's got some lovely fragrant herbs. You can have basil in there and coriander, and that's so delicious. The stock is made with all the bones, and so it's very meaty. It's almost like a consommé. And then you have the lovely rice noodles, which is your farinaceous. In Italy, that would be your pasta. In England, it's your potato. In some countries, it's rice, but you've got your farinaceous, and it's light. And then you'll have all those fragrant herbs and that delicious proteins, whether it's fish or whether it's meat. That was probably my first true Vietnamese dish, and I slapped a load of chili on it, and it took me back to when I was 10 years old.
Recently, you have experimented with a lot of Vietnamese ingredients. So what fascinates you the most about Vietnamese ingredients?
I find the food style here much more fragrant, much more colourful, less heavy, and I'm just beginning to learn myself how wonderful the Vietnamese ingredients are. In Europe, we're buying all these lovely fruits, you know, the Sharon fruit, the durian, the mangoes, the bananas, and they're all picked green, and they're all transported by cargo plane to Europe. And we get them, so they haven't seen the rain, they haven't seen the sunshine, so therefore they haven't got the flavour. If I go into a marketplace anywhere in Vietnam and buy rambutan or buy little, we call them milk bananas, they are like bananas and cream at home. It's already an ice cream without doing much to it. And they're sweet and they're succulent, and maybe if you're Vietnamese you might take that for granted, but it's the taste of the fruit, let's start with that, is 100% better than anything we can buy in Europe. Then the next thing is the seafood. So since I've been here, adapt my recipes according to the availability of the fresh fish here. Once you've understood the fish, its texture, its oil content, etc., you can adapt your style of food to those particular species of fish.
What are the challenges that you have faced using Vietnamese ingredients?
Cooking isn't that simple. It's a coming together. First you start with a beautiful ingredient, then you need an ability, and then after that there's some sort of artistry where you mix or melange this flavour with this flavour, with this texture, with this flavour and this sauce to bring it together as one. You can't come here with a big head like you know everything. You have to come here with your eyes wide open and embrace what's fundamentally wonderful about Vietnam. As tourism and hospitality opens up in Vietnam, this will be a huge money earner. I mean, have you seen how many in Saigon and here in Hanoi and Ha Long, how many different nationalities are walking around on the streets? They will expect more.
So why did you return to Vietnam for the second time? And can you share with us some of your new discoveries this time around?
So I can go with the young guys in our kitchen here in Vietnam, and I can give them what I know and show them what I can do and introduce them to a new repertoire that they probably haven't seen before. But at the same time, my eyes are wide open and I'm listening and I'm tasting and I'm taking more new stuff into me as well. I love street food. I quite often just stop and there'll be somebody walking down the road and have a pot of noodles and a bit of a stir fry, and I think, oh my God, this is heaven.
So during your time working in Vietnam, you have worked with Paradise and many other restaurants in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City.
When you work with a Vietnamese chef, what is your impression?
Working with Vietnamese chefs, the first thing I notice is their work ethic. They work very hard. It's very long. But what I'm also impressed with is how the Vietnamese chefs extract the flavor from the ingredients. So it's quite perfumed and fragrant, it's colourful, it's light to eat, which is great in this climate.
John Burton Race was born in 1957 in the UK. John has a great passion for the world's cuisine and began his career at famous restaurants in London. In 1983, he won the first Michelin star. From 2000 to 2005, he had 2 more Michelin star restaurants. In 2002, John decided to set foot in France and appear on Channel 4's French lip call show, putting his name among the ranks of celebrity chefs. Since then, John has repeatedly appeared on other popular shows like Taste Nation, Daily Cook Challenge, I Am a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here by ITV, and Put Your Menu Where Your Mouth Is of BBC.
How did you get into cooking?
I got into cooking at a very early age. When I was a little boy, I was always in the kitchen with my cook. She taught me different dishes and things like that. I started very early and never looked back, because the minute I started in a culinary school, then I went to France and worked in some places for very little money and just learnt the hard way.
What are your principles in choosing ingredients for your dishes?
If you're a chef, you buy things as they come into season. So you have to learn about the seasons in each country, first of all. And you buy them in season Y, because that's when they are at their best and most plentiful. But also on an economic basis, because they're most plentiful and in season, they'll also be cheaper. So when you're compiling a menu or creating your dish, you can work within the seasons, but at the same time be more commercially viable by looking at what's out there.
How do you judge the success of a dish?
You judge a dish by its taste and texture. Cooking is also about, to a certain degree, about science. So, you have to know what's the boiling point of water. You have to know why does a souffle come up. You have to know when is an egg yolk cooked at what temperature. You do have to know how to store food. You do have to know how to manage ingredients. Once you've got that basic scientific knowledge, you can then move on to its nutritional value, and then its texture, and then its flavour, and then it's up to the chef to extract that flavour. And then, technically, it's difficult because if something's overcooked or undercooked, it could be a question of seconds. When it comes to desserts, it's much more of a science than sauce or fish cookery, and 2 or 3 seconds on a certain dish is the difference between good, bad, ugly, or ruined.
Once again, thank you very much for joining the show. I wish you a wonderful journey experiencing Vietnamese cuisine.